My parents were hunting and fishing. Are you ready to start?
You can go now.
Okay, my parents grew up in Minnesota, up in the Boundary Waters, working as hunting and fishing guides for my mother's father, who built the first lodge on Greenwood Lake. This is north of Grand Marais, 26 miles up the Gunflint Trail. So that's where my mom and dad met. And when they first met, my mom being 11 years younger than my dad, they really didn't have much of a connection. And then after my father served in the horse cavalry in Dakota, he came back to work for my mom's dad, and mom had grown up enough that they fell in love. And then the rest of the story was when times got bad and they were forced to make a living by seining minnows for bait for fishermen who could afford to buy minnows, because there were no fishermen who could afford guides for a while. Uh, that's what mom and dad would do in the summer, and then in the winter they would trap muskrats and sell the furs. And it was during one of these winters of muskrat trapping that I was conceived in the wigwam that they put together with some canvas and straw for insulation, with an abandoned native wigwam frame. So that was the beginning of my story, and for my whole life, just hearing about their life in the forest and the North Woods, the Boundary Waters, has been, my ideal of what, the best life must be. So even though I've lived in Arizona most of my life, the family basically all moved out here when Grandpa died, and the kids weren't able to run the lodge by themselves. I still dream of Minnesota, and I've visited a couple of times. And I was born at Fort Snelling after that incident in the wigwam that winter. Mom definitely did not want to have a baby out there the next summer in the middle of the woods, so Dad re-enlisted, and I grew up as a military brat, and my father went through the evolution of the service to the point where he retired in the Air Force, out of the Air Force. Spent most of his career as a master sergeant, and they are the people who run the military. So anyway, so here in Arizona, I used to think, well, it's just nothing but rocks around here and barren looking hills, and it took me a while to realize that Arizona is actually one of the most diverse, amazing places on earth, and I love Arizona. And we have just about everything here that Minnesota has, except for it doesn't get as cold, the snow doesn't get as deep, but we have forests, we have wonderful places here, and I'm involved as much as I can be in protecting natural resources all over the country. But the Boundary Waters are some of our most precious land, because has not really been that invaded and occupied, and we've been able to set aside some areas to preserve them, and that preservation must continue. We have to protect those types of areas for the purposes of uh, natural habitat, so that we can have an earth that can keep us alive. That's an important part of it, but it's also an amazing recreation area. And without places to have recreation in nature, people are in danger of becoming totally unaware that we are nature, that we depend on nature. We're part of the system, the natural system that keeps us alive. So the Boundary Waters are one of those treasures to remind us who we really are and how important we can be to the earth.
Good job. Now, just at the end,
Yes.
say what your name is and where you're from.
My name is Bluebird Crossman. My mother called me John, but nobody knows that anymore. And I was born at Fort Snelling, Minneapolis, St. Paul, in 1941. I now live in Tempe, Arizona,